Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of A Happy Moment. My name is Dan. Glad to have you with me today. And all of you know that I enjoy a good conversation about wrestling and gaming. However, I've also been on the lookout for topics that may help with people's overall well being. And today, I have a very special guest who's going to talk a little bit with me about story work. And he is a master story work coach, Dave Robinson. Welcome to the show.
Dan, thank you for having me, my friend. I'm really looking forward to hopping in and chatting a little bit more about the stories we tell ourselves and wherever that takes us today.
Awesome. I'm excited about this. And so, Dave, first thing I got to ask you, what exactly is story work?
Great question. Great question. Good place to start as well. So, story work is the process of becoming aware of and then analyzing the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves, our past experiences, our life in general. And you can replace stories with beliefs or perceptions. Often is a word that works, but we all use words. Right now, we're using them outwardly, and a lot of our time is spent using words inwardly. When we think or when we project into the future or look back into the past with our thoughts. And all of those create stories about, again, the things that we have been through or the things that we're going to do in the future, hope to do in the future. Our words and our breath drive and dictate our physiology. And so we can talk ourselves into a stress state, think ourselves into a stress state. We can breathe ourselves into a stress state, and we can also do the opposite of all that.
You have a background in financial planning. So, what caused the change? How did you get involved with this?
So I actually went to I went to college to be a high school history teacher. And I realized about like 3 weeks, 4 weeks before I graduated that I did not want to be the teacher that only wanted to have his summers off and coach high school soccer. Like that was really the goal. But I did want to serve. I wanted to teach. I wanted to coach in some capacity. And so I had fallen in love with strength and conditioning throughout my college years. And I actually got a job at a D1 college here in my hometown of Richmond, Virginia, as a strength and conditioning coach right out of school. So I worked with football, men's soccer, women's soccer, field hockey, lacrosse, and I didn't have any flexibility of time or income. And I didn't feel like my greatest impact could be made, teaching people the back squat and the snatch and writing programs and stuff. As much as I love those things personally, trust me. So I got into financial planning, seeking that flexibility of time and income. And I ended up doing that for about 6.5 years. And frankly, I never intended to leave until I got bit by a spider in August of 2017. And I was in the hospital for a couple days. And it wasn't ever like, oh, Dave's going to die or anything. But it was a little hairy for a while. I had a nice infection going. And I had this like download, come to Jesus moment of, it's 1 a.m. on Saturday or Saturday night turned to Sunday morning. And I had the thought, oh, well, that means Sunday. That means tomorrow's Monday. Well, maybe I'll just stay here another day so I don't have to go back to work. And it was like psst, download, oh my God, man, you would rather stay in your hospital bed hooked up to all these machines and, not doing anything than go work at my own firm. Like it wasn't like I was working for somebody else, but I spent that night after that realization, fast forwarding and realizing like, man, I'm going to have a B- life at best if I keep doing this because it's not what I want to do. It's not what I was born for, created for, but certainly not what I could be the best in the world at in any way, shape, or form. And so that got me back into coaching. The thing that I knew, I left my financial planning career a month or two later and got back into coaching fitness and health, and then ultimately found story work personally found it in 2018, and then made the move professionally full time in early 2020. Once everything went remote, this was the thing to go into. So I've been full time working people's stories since probably May of 2020.
Do you ever wonder how your life might be different if that spider never bit you?
Yes, yes. And I like to say you can connect the dots after you've collected the dots. And like I can look backwards and see, oh, like this led to that, led to this, led to that, led to this, led to that. And it's really interesting because I've still got friends in the industry. I'm getting a coffee with the guy who I had the firm with next week, and think about what could have happened. Could have possibly been making more money And I also know that I would have spent a lot of time doing a lot of stuff that I don't want to do. And I have been very life rich, time rich, impact rich. And this past year was the best year I've ever had financially in 2023, including all the years from financial planning. And so, now the actual income has come around to the point of like, like we're doing it now. So it took a long time, and I probably could have quit a long time ago. And I was both determined and a little bit stubborn. And, I started something, so I kept going because I know this is what I was meant to do.
Very nice. Can you talk a little bit about what it means to be a story work coach? And do people just like approach you and be like, Dave, I could use some help here? Is that how it goes kind of?
Yeah. So I would say that in a practical sense, 50% of people know why they're there and know why they're hiring me, and the other 50% of people don't. So I'll explain that. Story work, I believe, was developed to help us work through the past experiences, right? So most people have had things that they've been through in their life that, at a minimum, were hurtful experiences. That might have been something that somebody said, something that somebody did. It could have been when you were 8, 18, 48, it doesn't matter. 8 minutes ago, 8 months ago, right? It could be something that was physical, could be something that was mental, emotional, it could be a disappointment. I didn't get the job or got the job and it didn't work. I mean, there's a million things that people could experience to create hurt or disappointment or that feeling, right? Another percentage of the population, and greater than one might expect, has been through traumatic or haunting experiences. So like the really bad stuff, right? I would say 50% of people come to me because they've experienced something in the hurt, heavy, haunted, traumatic world, and they want those energies up and out. Right? It's still affecting them. They're still thinking about it. It's still creating dis-ease in their bodies. It's creating a state, or has created a state of chronic stress in some capacity. They're still in that fight, flight, or freeze sympathetic nervous system state oftentimes from that experience, those experiences, or a culmination of those experiences. And so 50% of folks know, hey, this thing happened, I experienced this thing, and I don't want to think about it anymore. And I want that weight to go away. And so that's how we use story work to go in and do that. Uh, the other 50% of people, I would say, are either stuck, just like feeling blah, like don't have momentum. They're being plagued by their inner bully or their inner critic. They have imposter syndrome. They don't know like what they're here for. They're lacking a purpose, something along those lines. Or, and a couple folks are like feeling pretty good, and they just like, hey, I want to like create and architect the reality that I want for myself moving forward. And I'm not entirely sure how to do that. So they kind of lack direction or lack clarity about the future. And story work is so versatile because it can be past, present, or future when it comes to us being able to actually get in and dissect and then work and then change the words and then change ultimately the feelings that they create in our cells.
Okay. Do you know what is the origin of story work? Has it been around for a long time, or is it like a newer concept?
It's got some roots in NLP, neuro linguistic programming. It's got some roots in cognitive behavioral therapy. It's got some roots in a bunch of different places, quite frankly. My mentor in this work is a gentleman by the name of Mark England. He's founded a couple companies called Vocabulary, called Enlifted. Amazing, amazing guy, does amazing work. And what I've been able to do is take some of the principles that he's distilled, and over 3.5 years and 1,100 plus sessions, I've been able to weave in my own way of doing things and my way of seeing this work. And it's quite simple, frankly, and it's really not rocket science. We take thoughts from our heads and we write them down. And 99% of my work is remote or digital, and so 99% of my work is done via Zoom and a Google Doc. So when I say writing stuff down, it's really typed out. But either way, we're taking it from our heads, we're putting it onto the screen or the paper, and then we're reading it out loud, right? And both of those two things change things drastically. So the first step of just taking something from our heads and putting it down onto the page creates separation. So it takes us from being in the story to now where we've got some distance from it and we're observing the story. And that's a big key step. But a lot of people journal. A lot of people meditate. A lot of people, write stuff down. Most people write down their goals, or their resolutions at this time of year. Very few people write down their fears or their negative things they've been through. And way fewer than that actually read it out loud, because there's a way of making things real when you hear it as well as see it. And so after we read it out loud, there's often some emotion that comes along with that. And that might be, I got a list of emotions here from an individual yesterday. We started and he was a 6.5 out of 10 frustration, right? And then it got halfway through the process. He was at about an 8 out of 10 sadness. And then we started to slow down his pace of speech, and he started to see a couple other things that maybe he had flown through before or had glossed over before, or just didn't want to really look at before. So some other parts of the story started sinking in once we slowed it down. And then after we added some breath, some rhythmic, down-regulating breathing patterns to this, which science says just pulls us straight down into that parasympathetic nervous system state, that rest and relax state, the opposite of fight or flight, he was able to feel 10 out of 10 gratitude just from being able to see the story differently and to down regulate throughout that process. So after that, we go in and we potentially change some words around, potentially write a new story or type out a new version of the events. We get to, maybe that makes a link to something else. Like, oh, like I was really here to talk about A, but I could now weave, connect the dots all the way down to F, and like this event was the thing that really is the thing, and so then we go in and we work that story. And so it kind of weaves its own web of patterns of stories, beliefs, perceptions, etc.
Okay. So, in your experience, are there any one or two particular things that stand out as being the biggest challenge people face when it comes to being mentally healthy?
Their self-talk is huge. And I've got behind us, I know we're not doing video today, but I've got a picture and a depiction of the light wolf and the dark wolf fighting on my wall behind me. And that tale is a very popular tale. It's an old Native American story, and it goes something along the lines of there's a elder or shaman or medicine man, and he's telling a tale around the campfire of the battle between two wolves. And these two wolves have been fighting since the very beginning of time inside every single one of us. It's a great war. It'll always be waged. It's the battle between the light wolf and the dark wolf. And the dark wolf manifests itself as pain and envy and anger and jealousy and hatred and sadness and depression and anxiety and etc. And the light wolf manifests itself as joy and love and peace and gratitude and altruism and kindness and happiness and etc. etc. And some brave little boy or girl asked, which one wins? And he says, the one you feed, the one you feed. And ultimately, we've been given treats and T-bones and ribeyes to that dark wolf, and making that dark wolf really big and scary and snarly and loud. And thus, the light wolf is weak and, not as prevalent and, more apt to be hiding in the corner. And the only way to change that, you can't kill the dark wolf, you can't scare it away, right? But you can make it weaker, and you can make the light wolf way stronger by using different words and by thinking different thoughts and by understanding that our inner critic or our inner bully or the inner crap talker is really not us. Like, the self with the capital S or the soul with the capital S, it's this dark wolf. And so I have my clients name the dark wolf, and that in and of itself is a huge step, because now they know that it's not them talking crap to them. It's, this voice from inside that's separate from them that most likely isn't even their voice. It's stories that they've heard. Maybe it's parents, maybe it's critics, maybe it's bullies from the past, maybe it's, society or, something else. And then we start to feed the light wolf, and we feed the light wolf with positive affirmations, positive intentions, positive mantras, positive stories that often come as a direct translation. And I'm not talking like English. If somebody says, oh, I hate my life, I hate myself, everything sucks, right? Then we'll change that. And it doesn't happen immediately. This happens at the end of the steps. Because if we do it in the beginning, people are like, no, get out of here, right? But once we downshift into that state, And once we get that space from our stories by writing it down and by working through this process, then we're able to change I hate myself to I love myself, which is the most powerful affirmation that there is. And people are actually able to feel it and see it and know that it's real. And if they can't know it, feel it, see it, know that it's real, then they need some reps. Just like in the gym or just like in a diet, you don't need one meal and then lose the 100 pounds you need to lose. You don't do one workout and like, oh, now you got all these muscles. It's like, no, like you got to train it. You got to practice it, get your reps in. And so actually repping or training your positive self-talk builds up the light wolf and makes the dark wolf way smaller, way weaker, and sends him to the corner. And so self-talk is a massive thing that I work with my clients. I also work identity a lot because I believe we're the only ones that can define ourselves. We're the only ones that can sing our own praises or truly criticize ourselves or judge ourselves. And we're the only ones that can tell us who or what we can or can't be. That they've been or experienced or embodied in the past are still here. And it's often not the case. And they also believe that who they want to become in the future is way, way, way far away. And that's not really often the case either. It's often like you already have it. You're already there. You just need to see it different. And so I would say those two things are the present day things that I work the most in is, self-talk, and then we move into identity. And then that ultimately creates so much space and clarity and freedom and lightness that we're able to take the windows from opaque to transparent, the windows of the future, like what you actually want to do and how you want to do it, and then get into some really fun stuff when it comes to future casting and vision casting.
Words are so powerful. They have the ability to help us. They can also hurt us. When it comes to letting other people, like, why do we let other people's words affect us so much, especially when they're negative? If like a stranger says something mean to you, it can really bring you down. I'm sure a lot of people at some point in school have experienced, someone, saying mean stuff to them or about them. Why does that affect us so much?
I think there's a couple reasons. Words are very powerful in that they carry an energy and they carry a charge, right? Words are magical. The definition of abracadabra, which everybody associates with magic, is with my word I create or with my word I influence. And we all remember taking spelling as kids, spelling in middle school or elementary school. And spelling is the formation of words. And the definition of a spell is a word or collection of words of great influence. So when we speak, we are literally casting magic spells. And they're either like light magic, light wolf spells, or dark magic, dark wolf spells. I saw this online. I don't know who said this, and it's might have floated around, maybe just in my algorithm or whatever. But somebody was given a speech and they said, hey, I could say, Dan, I hate your blue hair. I hate it. It looks ugly. It looks terrible. Your blue hair sucks. And the guy was like, well, Dan, would you be offended by that? And it's like, I don't know. Like, Dan, you don't have blue hair. So like, you're not really talking to me, right? It's like, you can say what you want about my blue hair. My hair's not blue, man. It's like, no, I'm not offended by that in any way, shape, or form, because it's not applicable to me. And I think that that's where, if we build that inner resilience and we understand that we are the only ones who can define ourselves and we've got our light wolf really strong, then it doesn't matter what people say, it's just not true. Now, if there is a glimmer of truth to that or some hope to that, then that allows us to analyze ourselves and our situation and see, is there any accuracy to the things that are being said? And if so, do I like that? Or is it worth taking a look at and changing? A lot of our inner critic comes from perhaps our parents or our bosses or teachers. Parents when we were little, bosses and teachers when we were little, and now bosses now that we're older. And other kids. Kids are mean. And I don't think necessarily they mean to be mean, but we've all experienced that level of intentional or unintentional bullying when we were little. And it's just how much we happen to internalize that and then how much we happen to project that and keep that inside of us moving forward. So I think you might be surprised at how many stories I work from, ages 5 to 12, things that happen in that time frame. Most of our stories aren't our own, to be honest with you. Many of them aren't, at least. The parent who was belittling or critical, I can almost guarantee that, you know, that their parents, your grandparents were belittling and critical. You probably heard the phrase break generational curses and, be the one to break the generational curse. And what I like to say is be the one to create generational love, because ultimately that's the end goal. And that's what we're trying to look for and look at. If I say break a generational curse, you're going to think of a curse. So if I say create generational love, you're going to think of love, and you're going to end up seeing what you're looking at.
Do you have any stories that stand out as being like a particular story that you're really proud of, like the way that someone came to you, they really needed help and they were able to kind of turn their life around from talking to you?
Man, a lot. I've got two. One that happened a long time ago in one of my early sessions, and another that happened really, really recently. So I'll share both because they're both very different. Um, the one from a while ago is when I first started in this work. I linked up with an addiction recovery community, and I helped folks who were coming into rehab and into this recovery center out of jail and out of bond, and dealing with everything from alcohol to meth to heroin, like everything in between. And they had really gnarly stories, a lot of them. A lot of them didn't want to be there. So I had two sessions with each of the intensive patients in here. And the first session with this guy named Joe was a lot of rambling, a lot of, kind of pushing away, a lot of not engaging with the work itself. There was a lot of resistance with a capital R to going there and being there and working through things. And when we got on the second time, he was telling me, things like, man, I can't believe it's always like that, and everybody is always out to get me, and nobody really cares about me, and everybody, everything sucks, and yada yada yada. He's a real southern accent guy too, so it's kind of maybe one of the reasons it stands out. But he's like, man, I just always feel like everybody's out to get me. And I asked him, Joe, have you ever heard of the victim mentality? And he stopped and he paused for a second. He's like, no. And I said, you want to hear the definition? He said, sure. And I said, the victim mentality is an acquired personality trait whereby a person tends to regard himself or herself as the victim of the negative actions of others, even in the absence of clear evidence. The victim mentality depends on habitual thought processes and attributions. And then I stopped and I shut up. And he stared at me for like a calendar minute, man. And it was like, last one to talk loses, and I wasn't going to lose. I was just waiting to see what he had to say. And he gave the biggest breath. He goes, man, I've been a victim my whole life. I cannot believe it. I've been just stuck in victim mentality. Well, I'll be darned. And he just folded his arms and he just sat there and continued to stare, like this blank stare. And he goes, I'm just not going to be a victim anymore. Yeah, I'm not a victim anymore. And I got an email from Joe maybe 6 months ago. And it was email saying, hey, man, I had a picture too. Him and his wife and two kids. He was out fishing by, some lake in the country somewhere. And he says, hey, man, just want to say I just hit 2 years sober. I'm a dad again. My back with my wife, back with my kids. I think about that thing you said about the victim mentality all the time. Anytime I feel like, something happens that's wrong or bad, or, the world's out to get me, I think about that definition, and I know that I'm not a victim. I can control my circumstances and I can, keep going. So I just want to say thank you for sharing that with me. And I'm still going and I'm going to keep going, man. And I hope you do too. And it was so cool, man. It really was. I learned a lot from my experiences in working with that community. And a lot of the time it didn't work, to be honest with you. A lot of the time there were people who just still had the resistance to getting better. Or, the fight against the addiction was too strong, or whatever it may be. And, there were a lot that did work. And Joe was one of them that stood out and that was still sober and still going with it, which was super, super cool. The other one was I did a session within the past 2 weeks, 3 weeks with a woman who is the only person I know who shares my birthday. We're birthday twins. And I was a couple years older than her. We went to high school together. So she was a freshman when I was a sophomore or a junior or something like that. And we became really good friends. We had a lot of classes together and we stayed good friends throughout, the past 20 plus years, 24, 25 years. And she reached out to me a month or so ago because she had just lost her brother. She lost her dad in the past. Her brother, she lost due to a homicide. So it was something that was really tough and it was hurtful and it was haunting to her. And she, we did this identity exercise, and the identity exercise is who have I been, who am I now, and who am I becoming? And there's a couple little twists and turns. And I saw her write out, I am becoming a woman who's strong. I am becoming someone who is worthy of love. I am becoming, someone who I am proud of. And she got to the end of that. And like I said, I've known her for a long time. And I had her reread it. But without her seeing, I just deleted all the words becoming. And I combined I just basically deleted the who am I becoming section. And I turned it into the who am I now section. So she got to the very end and she said, instead of I am becoming a woman who's strong, it was I am a woman who's strong. I am worthy of love. I am, et cetera, et cetera. And she just broke down crying immediately. The tears came, the smile came. She's like, I am strong. I am worthy of love. And you can just see light bulb moment change just like that, where she understood that she was already all those things that she felt like were very far out in the future. And she's probably sent me a text a day for the past 2 weeks, 3 weeks of like, dude, this is so awesome. Thank you so much. Like, life is incredible. Like, things are going so well. Like, I'm feeding my light wolf. I know that I'm strong. And like, it's just been so cool to see and be a part of, especially because we have been friends for so long, and so it's so versatile, man. It really, really is so versatile as a methodology. And our words are so powerful as far as how much influence they have over us in our lives. And when we choose the right ones to tell ourselves the right stories, everything gets better.
The words are so powerful, and so are our minds. When confronted with certain things, our mind has the ability to react positively or negatively. Or would you say that when you talk to people and there's kind of like that revelation moment for them, do you think that the majority of people are like accepting of that, or are there quite a few, try to reject it and maybe resist a little bit?
There's some resistance sometimes, but I think it's the process that allows us to get there that is most powerful, and it's about finding the right words, right? So I'll give you an example personally. In 2019, I had a pretty bad back injury. And I've broken my wrist, I've broken my collarbone, I've had some ankle stuff go on, I've had concussions, I've had the hospital visit with a spider bite, so it wasn't totally a new thing to have an injury, but this was the one that affected my activities of daily living tremendously. Couldn't pick up a pencil for a long time on the floor. And I kept thinking, I realized a couple months later that I kept thinking, my back is effed. My back is effed up. My back is effed. I would sit down, it would tweak. Oh, my back is effed. Or like I'd be down on the floor trying to do my rehab and just get so frustrated, be like, oh, my back is effed, And I thought, well, what's the opposite of that? Let me try this out. I started to say, my back is healed. My back is healed. My back is healed. And it made it even worse, man. It pissed me off because like I knew that wasn't accurate. Like my back sure as heck wasn't healed. In fact, my back was effed. Like that's really where it was. I sat in that for like a week and I tried it for a week and it just wasn't landing at all. I had so much resistance to it and I could feel the tension in my chest and my breath and, just all of it. It's like, oh, this is not helping. It's making it worse. So then I took off the ED and I added an ING. He said, well, my back is healing. Huh. That hits. That lands. So let me try something else. I'm in the process of healing my back. Boom. I could say that solidly. I could feel that. One day my back will be fully healed. boom. And here I am in 2024, my back is fully healed. And like, I knew it would be one day, one day I'll return to regular physical activity again. It's like, boom. And I just created this momentum from just changing the words. And so then I was able oh, if my back is healing, or if I'm in the process of healing my back, I was much more likely to do my rehab. I was much more likely to go walk, which was the thing that really, really helped, even though it was the middle of winter time and super cold, but hey, I'm in the process of healing my back. So instead of my back being effed and me just like laying on the couch and making it worse, or certainly not making it better, like, no, I actually like started attacking the rehab, and I started like making myself do the things that I was resistant to doing because of the words I was using. And so I think when people do have resistance to this work, we haven't found the right phrase, or maybe it isn't matching with where they are or where they want to be yet. And so it's just iterations to get there. And also they might be stuck in that fight or flight still. And so maybe we need to slow it down a little bit more. Maybe we need to breathe through it a little bit more to get them down into that rest and relax to where they can say it and mean it and feel it.
It sounds like when doing store work, it sounds like there's a lot to cover. About how long do you spend with someone? Does it vary quite a bit?
It does. I very rarely do single sessions. My sessions are about 75 minutes, and that's very scientific. An hour was too short, and an hour and a half is too long. So, and I say that jokingly, but it's also like it happens almost every time. It's like the good stuff like happens at like minute 65, and then we take it to 75, and like we're good. But most of the time, I work with people for either about 2 months or about 6, 7 months. Sometimes I've got year-long clients, but mostly that's because they re-upped on the 6 month. And so I typically work in 8 packs or 24 packs. And that seems to work really, really well. In the 8 pack, we can take and, lift out together a couple of the heavy hurt haunted stories. We can definitely do Light Wolf, Dark Wolf. We can definitely get into identity. Probably won't be able to get into much future stuff. And we probably won't be able to get into much present day light stuff. But that's where that 24 pack, that 6 to 8 month time frame works really, really well, because we don't have to like rush to get into any particular stories. If somebody's feeling really down that day or really positive that day, we can table stuff, or pull stuff out of the past, present, future to work on. And we can do a whole bunch of future planning and future casting, and we can deal with the stuff that pops up on a day-to-day or week-to-week or month-to-month basis. And so I would say the majority of my clients are in that, 6 to 8 month time frame.
I don't know about other parts of the world, but I think in our country, it seems like there's kind of, I don't know, like a stigma against mental health. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think as men, it's harder and even worse, because men are supposed to be the strong ones. Real men don't cry, and like all that BS, right? It's hard for people to ask for help, men, women, or otherwise. Right? It's hard for people to ask for help. And I always say that there's 3 really, really important and very difficult steps before I get to the point of being able to work with somebody. 1, admit you need help. 2, ask for help. 3, this is the hardest, actually receive when it's all right, and follow through, right? So I think that we've been taught and conditioned societally and culturally, and most likely from our parents as well, that we can do it ourselves. We're an independent nation. We're a strong nation, and I think that works against us in these capacities. I think the conversation is changing and has changed drastically over the last couple of years, maybe the last decade, certainly, where now things like therapy and things like counseling are a lot more readily available, and they're a lot more positively looked on. I think that the big difference between story work and therapy, story work is not therapy, it is therapeutic, but therapy can be a lot of expressing how we feel and talking in circles. And that may work for some people, and it may work initially for some people, but it also leaves a lot to be desired when it comes to actually downshifting from the stories and the things we're talking about, and actually moving on to getting that stuff up and out and having resolution, right? It's also not something you can practice. You can practice story work, right? So I just think there's a cultural shift that needs to happen, but is in the process of happening. as we speak, where we are now more in tune with our mind body connection and more apt to actually get in and shift things when we don't like them anymore. We're not just like stuck doing the thing we're doing or thinking the thing that we've been thinking just because that's what we've been doing or thinking our whole lives. It's like, no, let's go change stuff.
Yeah, I think we're kind of slowly moving in the right direction. Just gonna take a little bit more time to get there. So among the people that you work with, um, have you ever been surprised by someone that approached you like, "Oh, I never would have thought this person would come to me," or
Oh yeah.
anything like that?
Oh yeah. For sure. I've been surprised by the stories. I've been surprised by the who reaches out and when and how. From a marketing perspective, I don't have a niche. It's not like I have a avatar of an ideal client. My youngest client ever was 8. My oldest client ever for a long time was 80. But back in the end of December, did a single session with an 82-year-old. Now he's my record. I think for the majority of 2023, I was working with men either in their like late 20s or in their early to mid 40s. And then my past 7 clients that have come on board with me have all been women. So like, I don't know, it's kind of all in between. I think the thing that surprises me is the prevalence of the haunted stories, as well as I've had some sessions and conversations with some folks with some like really big social media followings that you would feel like you appear to be very successful, on the outside, and they are successful by societal standards as far as followers, and I imagine the monetary compensation that comes with that, but they're hurt. They are dissatisfied with life. They feel stuck. They are dealing with a lot of the same stuff that we all deal with. They feel like an imposter, even with 1 million followers. And you're like, "Huh," like me with 3,000 kind of feels like that sometimes too, And so, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that as human beings are human condition or human being condition things that we all deal with. And it doesn't really matter where our success is or isn't. We're dealing with life, man, and it's been refreshing to a degree and also like disheartening and sad in the same context to have people from all walks of life be dealing with all the same types of stuff.
Yeah, we all go through the same thing together, and it'd be nice if we could all just be kind to each other too. You know,
Amen to
'cause
that.
uh, Dave, tell us a little bit more about yourself. How do you stay mentally healthy? Like, what are some of your favorite activities to keep you staying positive?
I love expressing myself physically, so I'm a very active person. I run ultra marathons. I used to be a power lifter in college and a strength athlete, and then when the back thing happened. I dropped that identity, and that was probably for my greater good. Take out the probably, that was for my greater good, and I shifted my identity as an athlete. I've always been a soccer player. Can't play now in the middle of winter, but I'm really excited to go out and hit the pitch with the lads again. And once springtime comes around, I got an incredible support system as far as my fiance Ruslana. I got an incredible support system with other coaches and folks in my community. I admittedly, I don't journal as much as I could. Admittedly, every single time I do breath work, I'm like, God, I should be doing this every day. Like, what am I doing? Like, why am I not doing this all the time? I do a lot of cold bath stuff, and I've got a sauna in my office. And so I do like cold bath, sauna, a pretty fair amount. But I try to make my dopamine hard to get, if that makes sense. And I sure fall into the doom scrolling every now and then, but I tend to not, or try my best not to get my dopamine from easy sources, so make it harder to get. And so it lasts longer and feels better. And I get access to a couple other, positive mental, emotional, but mostly physical things as well.
You mentioned the cold bath thing, and I've heard people talk about that and how it's supposed to stimulate, like, what is it called? The vagus nerve, I think.
Mhm.
And oh, how does that work anyway? Because man, I've tried taking like a cold shower before, and I last about 2 seconds, and I just can't do it.
So I actually learned about the cold exposure, cold therapy back in like 2015. There was a guy, Scott Carney, who wrote a book called What Does Not Kill Us or What Doesn't Kill Us. And he highlighted Wim Hof, who's become very famous in this community as being somebody who is, adds the breathing to the cold exposure. But what uh, what often happens and why I think cold is so valuable is a number of aspects and reasons. And one is that the mental component. It's like every single time, just about. It's like you look at the cold and you look at your shower knob and you're like, I don't want to do this, but you do it. So it's like you're overcoming the resistance. You're proving to yourself that you can do the hard things. And then what it teaches us is to downregulate in stressful environments. So when stress occurs, when that stimulus occurs, we always have a chance to choose our response. So we get to train ourselves to do that in a very safe environment with cold exposure, but our bodies don't necessarily know that it's safe. Like deep down we do, because we're not falling into a frozen lake in the middle of Michigan in the middle of the winter. That would be dangerous. But if we have an ice bath, or we're, right there on the shore with a towel and and the ability to get right back out, or in our shower, like we know that we're safe. And so we can down regulate, get to that relaxed point, and then it starts to actually feel good, right? One of the things that I found to be most valuable is when it's called the mammalian dive reflex, I believe. And when you have cold water on your face or on your head, it triggers a part of our nervous system, our deep, like inner evolutionary biology that calms us down pretty instantly. And it's basically like if a mammal falls into the water, you got limited time to figure this out. And instead of being like, and panicking, right, which would make things way worse, it, once your head gets wet, your face or your head gets wet with cold water, then that signals to your body to pretty immediately downshift. And so that you could figure this out and get out of the situation and survive. And so what I find is that when I get into my ice tub, if I get in up my chest or up to my neck and I don't splash my face and get water on my head, then it is harder than if I do, believe it or not. Because as soon as I do, then I just do that. I just can kind of like relax into it. And that's after but that just to get that initial shock out of the way. I used to freak out in the ice bath, and I used to like, do it for 20 seconds. And then no way, I'm getting out. This sucks. It hurts, yada, yada. But over time and over practice and over reps, I've been able to really lean into that. And I did 3 minutes on, got out, hopped in the hot tub for a little bit, and got back in and finished on 2 minutes in the cold tub, this morning. So I've got 5 total minutes this morning. I finished that at like 9:40. We started the interview at 10, my time. And so I got enough time to hop out, dry off, grab a coffee, and hop on here. And I feel energized, but without being stressed or upregulated. And so that's the big benefit of the cold, in my opinion. One of the many benefits of the cold.
I get a shiver just thinking about it, but at some point I'll give it a try again and we'll see how it goes, but no guarantees.
But, it is different being 0 degrees there versus 35 or 40 degrees here, like the colder it gets, the harder it is for mentally to wrap your head around it, and yeah, give it a shot, man, give it a try. Cause it really is something that is super, super beneficial in a lot of ways, not just physiologically.
Is a big part of it just the feel of the cold water on your skin? Because I can walk outside right now and I'll start freezing, but that's probably not gonna have the same benefit, is it?
So cold exposure can be done in a lot of different ways. The water is an important aspect to that. Cold exposure in general is valuable for a number of reasons. I think the biggest benefit comes from, again, that mental, emotional state of being like, hey, I'm going to do this hard thing, and like going through with it. But it's also, if water is moving, it feels colder. It actually is colder, because when you sit in a tub, for example, and don't move, there are these little air pockets that form that makes things a little bit warmer. But when the water's flowing, there's no chance for those air pockets to kind of insulate you a little bit. I think the water too, and something to realize even in or outside of water, is like not giving it the power that prevents us from doing it. Like cold is just cold. That's it. It's not good. It's not bad. Just like hot is just hot. It's not necessarily good or bad. It creates a sensation. We can call that pain, or we can just say it's cold, and not make it anything more or less than it is. And so I realized that kind of early on, a number of years ago, where, I was associating the cold with emotions. But then when I started just saying like, no, that's just like, let's just end it right there. Let's just put a period after it. Like, it's cold, period. Like, it's just cold. Nothing more, nothing less. Then that made things a lot better, not only in the ice bath, but in the middle of wintertime too. Like, go out on a walk. It's cold. Okay, great. It's cold. Well, in the summertime, it's hot. Like, okay, great. It's hot. It's that's all that it is. It's just cold or hot or nice out. Whatever. So
Okay. Yeah, I'll try and see how it goes. So there's certain things in life like that we can do to make ourselves healthier. We can exercise, eat good, you know, stay away from too much junk food. A lot of that stuff is, it's kind of common sense, but yet so many of us struggle with it. Like, why is it so hard for us to keep ourselves healthy sometimes?
lot of it is stacked against us societally and culturally, and in the Western world especially. I think there's a lot of misinformation out there, and I know that's a buzzword term right now, but especially when it comes to diet, you know, veganism, vegetarian, or no, like meat's actually good for you. Or it's like, no, but not red meat, but it's like, well, actually red meat is, it's like, well, what about cholesterol? It's like, well, cholesterol actually increases testosterone, so it's good for you. And it's like, there's just this huge circle of info when it comes to dieting. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer when it comes to diet. I also know that you can look at something and have a pretty good idea of like, hey, should I eat this all day every day or should I not? And I think we can all tell when, hey, the bag of Doritos is right there. Like, you probably shouldn't eat that all day every day. It's like, oh, there's something that came from the ground or, was alive at one point. Like that might be more healthy to eat on a regular basis. I think there's a ton of environmental factors. There's a lot of chemicals in everything. There's a lot of herbicides, pesticides, fertilizers, all kinds of stuff in our food that makes things hard. Even when you're eating the right things, quote unquote, well, maybe you got environmental stuff going on. There's, hard to drink just tap water and be healthy. It's hard to, so, maybe in big cities, there's pollution and smog and smoke and air quality issues. So I think there's a lot of stuff that's stacked against us environmentally as well. But most of it is there's a comfort crisis going on where, like it's 68 degrees in the house right now, and the summertime it's 71 degrees. And then a lot of people are inside constantly. They're in their cars or they're at work. They don't go outside. They don't get sunshine. They don't put their feet in the grass, in the ground and ground. They don't drink clean water and they don't eat clean food because it's quote unquote hard, or it's comfortable to do the easy thing. Right. And that comfort means that we're not adapting and we're not building resilience, and we are more apt to be fragile. And so our immune systems become more compromised. We are more likely to get sick. And if we stay inside all day and eat junk food and don't move our bodies, then we're probably not going to feel very good mentally, emotionally either. And so I always say there's two sides to the coin, and I coached healthy, holistic habits and fitness for a long time. There's the side of the coin that says like, hey, move your butt, do it outside, guarantee you feel a different way, probably better. And then there's the other side of the coin of like, work your stories. There is the how you speak to yourself about yourself matters a whole heck of a lot. And yes, there are mental, emotional, and even under the hood factors that contribute to health big time as well. And so I think most people just aren't realizing how much of an impact their movement or their diet can be and how they feel and how healthy they can be. And I think we are also just like really happy to sit and watch TV and don't know anything otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that first thing you mentioned about misinformation, that really gets a lot of people too. Because I've heard, some people say, well, my doctor says I shouldn't be doing this, and another person will say, well, my doctor says you should be doing that. So there's like so many different conflicting reports out there, and I think a lot of times it becomes a matter of we trust what's most convenient for us,
Mhm.
and it's tricky sometimes.
I would say that, and I'm not a doctor, right? So again, listeners, take this with it's a healthy grain of salt. PS, which is actually good for you, especially if you eat the right salt. Like, what do you think in your gut, deep down? Not what in your head, what you can rationalize or create logically. Not in your heart, what you feel or what you want. It's like in your gut. Like, is this good for you, or is it? And if it is, do more of it. And if it's not, do less of it. Regardless of how it feels. I think we can rationalize a lot of things for ourselves, but ultimately, if we put our decisions all in the hands of quote unquote experts, then we are probably going to be led astray, either most likely unintentionally, potentially nefariously and intentionally, right? Follow the money, right? And I think a lot of times the things that are free are the best bets you can have. Hey guys, sleep is free. Just go to bed, sleep more, heals everything. The sun is free. Go outside, get sunshine. The grass is free. Take your shoes off, stick your feet in the grass, good things happen. There's a lot of free things. Walking is free. Hey, I can't afford a gym. Cool. Do you have a floor where you are? Awesome. Get down on the floor, stretch, do some push-ups, do some squats, move your feet on the floor, and like good things are going to happen. So I think we create a whole bunch of excuses because again, we don't want to do hard things or we want to take a pill and have a panacea of like, oh, this is going to fix everything. It's like, well, if you want a panacea, like go to bed, like start getting 8 or 9 hours of sleep a night and watch how drastically your world changes. So I think we overcomplicate things a lot and we put our trust into quote unquote experts way too much when we inherently know what being a human being is and how to be a human being.
Yeah, absolutely. Would you have any kind of general tips or advice for people as far as, someone out there that might be struggling mentally? Things that people might be able to do just to, kind of keep their spirits up, so to speak?
Do all the physical stuff that we, kind of talked about. Go outside, feed in the grass, go to sleep, etc. Remove the negative stuff from your environment. And that might be people, that might be junk food, that might be TV that doesn't help or serve you. Curate your social media platforms. You find yourself playing the comparison game all the time, or you find yourself just like scrolling, looking at stuff that doesn't help you, like start following people who do and who are positive and who do exhibit the traits and help you, potentially become the person you'd like to become. Treat yourself with kindness. And that often means doing something that you might not want to do in the moment or might be hard to do in the moment. And certainly write stuff down. Take a pen to pad, pull up your computer, go to your browser, type doc.new. That opens a new Google Doc for you, an untitled, fresh new Google Doc, and just start typing, and I think you'll be in a greater state. Take out the think. I know you'll be in a greater, happier state if you get some of the negative stuff that's bouncing around in your brain, which sounds a lot like this in our brains. It's just like static and like not helpful. Like get that out, put it on the page, and you'll be shocked how drastically and instantly you start to feel better by simply writing something down.
David, where can people go to find you online?
Y'all can find me at workyourstories.com. Again, my website is workyourstories.com. And you can also find me on either LinkedIn or Instagram. On Instagram, I'm at daverobinson.coach. Again, daverobinson.coach. That's my preferred platform. I share a lot about my life in general, but I do a ton of story work related stuff as well as health and fitness related stuff on there as well.
Okay. Well, Dave, we've covered a lot of ground here. Was there anything else you'd like to touch on before we wrap up?
This has been great, Dan. You've crushed it. It hasn't felt like was scripted in any capacity. We've just had a nice conversation. You've asked a lot of really deep and well-timed questions, and I really appreciated you having me on here on A Happy Moment today.
Thank you. I definitely had a lot of fun talking to you, and maybe at some point in the future we can talk again.
Let's do it.
All right. Dave Robinson, thank you so much. And thank you to everybody for joining us today. If you'd like to learn more about my podcast, you can find me on Twitter at a happy moment pod. I'm also on YouTube. Just search for a happy moment. And I will see you guys next time. Take care.